Everyone has been in that situation whereby you're going to work in a new place and you just get nervous because you don't know who you're going to meet. How are the people going to accept you? Are you going to be able to work well and make new friends? And this place wasn't different. Funny thing, it was a rainy season and my shoes had already collected dust before I even reached the classroom. And by the time I sat down, they already looked like they belonged there. Some days announce themselves loudly, but others, they wait quietly until you're already inside them. And today was the second kind. Nilikuwa ninakaa tu hivi nikijiuliza hapa ni wapi. I arrived at my placement with very reasonable expectations. Not luxury, not smart boards, just neatness. And since this was a public school funded by the national government with the ECDE section under the county government, they had two governments. So surely at least one tin of paint between them. And in my head, ECDE classrooms were supposed to look like joy had passed through and decided to stay, you know? Colorful walls, friendly posters, tiny chairs that wobble but try their best. Places that announce without saying a word that children matter here. I carried that picture with me very confidently. It had no reason to be nervous yet. So I went and I reached at the administration block where I was assigned to the ECDE section. No suspense, no warning, just you'll be working there. So I was pointed into that direction and I walked past classrooms that had seen better days but were still standing in their dignity, past a playground that looked like it had retired early. Then I stopped in front of a building that had decided that paint was optional. On it, written clearly, proudly, without hesitation, were the words girls' toilet. So I slowed down, not dramatically, but just enough to let my brain catch up with my feet. I told myself sensible lies. Maybe it was an old label, or maybe the class is inside and the toilet is metaphorical, you know? I checked the sign again. Girls' toilet. Still there, still confident. I checked it one more time just to be sure the letters hadn't rearranged themselves out of pity. Sadly, they had not. So I walked towards the building calmly because panicking in front of signage rarely helps. And inside the toilet, I had laughter. Bright, eager faces turned towards me with smiles wild enough to completely ignore the irony outside. Children were seated, waiting, and ready. At that moment, I realized something important. The children were very lucky because they couldn't read. So the classroom was dusty, you know, the kind of dust that has a relationship with the floor. The ground was uneven, decorated generously with potholes. Some were dry, some were filled with rainwater, because as I said, it was still a rainy season. And the windows in the classroom, they had no window panes. They were just open frames inviting weather to participate inside the lesson. And because it was a rainy season, the class was partially flooded, but not dramatically, you know, just enough to remind you that learning here requires balance. And still, the children sat there like this was completely normal because to them, this was their norm. They came here every day, and when it was a rainy season, they would find the class flooded, but they would still just show up. I stood there trying to look composed, while my expectation quietly packed their bags and left. No one complained. No one asked why their classroom had a second identity. They simply adjusted their feet away from the water. They leaned forward and they were all looking at me like, so are we learning today or what? There's a strange kind of humor that lives in contradiction. A building labeled girls' toilet filled with children who are eager to learn. A flooded classroom with full attendance. Two governments responsible and one very confident sign doing the most. If laughter is sometimes a survival instinct, this place had mastered it silently. But the humor faded quickly because I kept thinking, what happens when I teach these children and at the end of the day or at the end of the year, they learn how to read? What happens when one day one child sounds out the words on the wall? What lesson does that teach? Long before the numbers and the letters do. And that day, I didn't teach much. I observed more than I spoke. I listened more than I had planned. I realized that my job here wouldn't just be teaching content, it will be translating reality without crushing curiosity, holding space for children who arrive joyful, even when the system does not arrive prepared. At the end of the day, I left the classroom with dust on my shoes and a strange mix of laughter and heaviness in my chest. The sign stayed behind. The children stayed brighter than that sign. And well, tomorrow I will return with chalk, with patience, and with understanding that sometimes the lesson begins long before the alphabet does. And I can't wait to call my mom and tell her about this. She likes such funny stories. So, if you're listening to this, this is my first episode of Chalk Dust series, and I'll be doing episodes like this as the weeks come by. Looking forward to having you all sharing this joy with me, the joy of becoming a teacher. So please subscribe and leave a comment in the comment section. Have a great day. Bye bye.